Today, Sam Bankman-Fried must move back into his parents' house as part of his $250 million bail agreement. Plus, the latest on Bitcoin miner Core Scientific going bankrupt. And Callie Cox of eToro outlines her forecast for crypto markets in 2023. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Kate Rooney. Crypto prices are trading mixed to end the week. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin reversed course from the past several days, inching higher but remaining below that $17,000 level. Ether also rose today, trading around $1,200, but Solana dropped about 1%. Bitcoin and Ether are slightly higher for the week as well. Okay, let's talk about some of the top stories. First, Sam Bankman-Fried has been released on a $250 million bond and is allowed to live in his parents' house as he awaits trial over the collapse of the crypto exchange he founded. SBF, as he's also known, appeared before a judge in the Southern District of New York yesterday, the day after arriving in the U.S. from the Bahamas. The former billionaire's bail package would require him to give up his passport and wear an electronic monitoring bracelet. He's also supposed to stay home in confinement at his parents' house in California. He must submit to mental health counseling as well and needs government approval for any expenses above $1,000. The judge said that since SBF has gained sufficient notoriety, it would be impossible for him to flee or engage in more financial crimes. His parents put up equity in their Palo Alto home to secure that bond. A prosecutor argued that the former FTX CEO carried out a, quote, fraud of epic proportions. Last week, federal prosecutors charged SBF with stealing billions of dollars in FTX customer assets to plug losses at the crypto exchange's sister hedge fund, Alameda. On Wednesday, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams announced two of SBF's closest former associates, Alameda Research CEO Caroline Ellison and FTX co-founder Gary Wang, pleaded guilty and are cooperating with prosecutors. The two cut a deal with federal prosecutors for $250,000 in bail and some travel restrictions. Federal charges and regulatory complaints allege that Ellison and Wang were intricately involved in executing SBF's multi-billion-dollar fraud. Bankman-Fried's next court date is set for January 3rd. Next, FTX looks to the help of a bankruptcy court as the battle over ownership of about $450 million worth of Robinhood stock continues. That's according to this court document filed yesterday. At issue are about 56 million Robinhood shares, which court docs indicate are currently frozen in a brokerage account. The filing shows those shares are owned by Emergent Fidelity Technologies, a corporate entity organized in Antigua and Barbuda and 90% controlled by Bankman-Fried. According to this filing, three parties have tried to get control of those shares, including bankrupt crypto lender BlockFi, an FTX creditor, and Bankman-Fried himself, who has indicated he wants to use those shares to cover the cost of his legal bills. FTX argued those shares should stay frozen while the company tries to figure out how to repay all of its creditors. And last, Core Scientific just got court approval to fund its bankruptcy case with a more than $37 million loan from a group of existing creditors. Yesterday, the judge approved the Bitcoin mining company's bankruptcy loan on an interim basis. The firm will seek final approval of that loan and permission to borrow an additional $37.5 million in January. However, Core Scientific's attorney indicated that the company is open to better financing offers from other lenders. The Bitcoin mining firm filed for bankruptcy protection earlier this week, pointing to the sharp drop in Bitcoin prices, soaring energy costs, and a $7 million unpaid debt from one of its biggest customers, bankrupt crypto lender Celsius. In court filings, Core Scientific said it won't liquidate and plans to pursue a restructuring backed by creditors who hold more than 50% of the firm's convertible notes. All right, on to our main story. As 2022 comes to a close, Crypto World's Tanea McKeel spoke to Callie Cox, an investment analyst at eToro, about what the current crypto winter has taught digital asset investors and what to look out for in these markets in the new year.
The end of the year is upon us. It has been quite a year, across assets. What has it been like for you, and what are some of your biggest takeaways, highlights, lowlights, if you will, of 2022?
Well, I think it's been a painful year for a lot of people, but it's been a year of learning for me and for a lot of different investors. We saw an environment we haven't seen in a while, the Fed hiking rates aggressively, high inflation, a possible recession, and definitely a slowing economy. So when I look back, It was a year where it seemed like nothing worked, but when I look back, there were a lot of interesting crosswinds that led to a lot of different opportunities. They just weren't so obvious when we were going through it. Like in a period of high inflation, we saw real assets outperform, the things that you hold in your hand, dollars, commodities, a little bit of real estate here and there. So it's one of those years where if you look back, hindsight is kind of 2020 in a way. But at the same time, that's not how markets work. And we're heading into another uniquely challenging year.
Focusing in on Bitcoin specifically, how much lower can the price go right now? And I'm not asking for an actual price prediction, but what is going on? We're still monitoring the fallout of FTX. Right now, we're kind of zoomed in on, what is happening with Sam Bankman-Fried's case specifically, but we have yet to see how widespread the contagion could be. And then also on the macro front, I think a lot of people are ready to say goodbye to this year, but there's still going to be a bunch of volatility ahead in 2023. So how much lower can Bitcoin go, and how do you expect to see it play out over the next few months or even through next year?
Well, I think the analyst in me, whenever I think about where any kind of asset could go, I always think of the intrinsic value, aka or i.e. what that asset could be priced at if you look at the fundamentals. And the tricky thing about Bitcoin is we're still trying to figure out what that intrinsic value is. Crypto is still a young, risky market. We all know that. So we're still trying to get our hands around it. I feel encouraged by the stability we're seeing in Bitcoin's price. It tells me that at these levels, there are still some interested buyers. It looks like there still is some demand for Bitcoin here. And the macro environment is turning in Bitcoin's favor too. We have the Fed slowing on rate hikes. We have some progress on the inflation side. Crypto is a risk asset. I know that its identity is an open question, but I think we've seen pretty clearly this year that it's a risk asset, and the favor is turning back to risky assets. The problem is we don't know how much time that'll take, and Bitcoin falls into that bucket.
What is one of your more favored metrics when it comes to Bitcoin, when you're trying to filter out the noise, when prices are what they are? A lot of people, you may be one of them, will say that they're not exactly indicative of Bitcoin's value. So what are the metrics that you like to focus on that investors should be following along with over the next year?
Sure. So when it comes to crypto, there's a technical side and then there's a blooming fundamentals side. And on the technical side, I think the moving averages, the 50-day, 100-day, 200-day are always important to watch, because ultimately when it comes to an asset that's based a lot on supply and demand, people are going to grasp onto any kind of numbers, any kind of signal they can get. And the moving averages are the big signal that jump out there. In terms of fundamentals, any kind of metric that gives us supply and demand indications is really important in my mind. I also like to look at developer activity when I'm thinking about crypto in general. That's a really big one for Ethereum. And I'm not saying that it's a price predictor by any point, but when I'm thinking about, prices forming a base, or when I'm thinking about some interest, I always look to volume. I always look to buyers across different sizes of buyers. And then when I look to staying power, I think about developers and the actual building that's happening on blockchains.
Crypto winter is typically a time we start to see what new use cases could potentially come out and ride the wave up in the next bull market. Is there anything that you're seeing? And do you think that we're going to get one of those new use cases this crypto winter, or are we in sort of a different environment now?
I think what this crypto winter has taught us is that we need to find some real use cases for crypto, and that for far too long there was capital flowing to unproductive projects. Crypto as a concept hasn't changed, but we have seen the industry change a lot, and I'm sure 2023 will bring another year of change as well. So when I think about use cases, when I think about what could be really compelling from a real world use case perspective, I think about smart contracts, and I think about the tokenization of financial assets as well. And again, we saw a little bit of that, and we're kind of working our way through. Again, it's a young, risky industry, but there are some really compelling reasons why smart contracts could do things for brands and companies. The blockchain could facilitate quicker payments, a better payment system for everybody. Tokenization of financial contracts. I mean, we're working within an old market system, and there are plenty of ways we can improve there. The tricky part is in the financial system, there is friction for a reason. There has to be due diligence. There has to be know your customer rules. So I think the industry is working through that and finding the balance of decentralization versus needed centralization. But I'm hoping and I'm hopeful that in 2023, with the building that's going on and with scarce capital flowing to productive projects, that we will see some progress on that front.
Okay, that's it for Crypto World this week, but we'll be back again next week with a lot more. Have a great weekend. We'll see you then.